we shall move on. We've been lingering a lot in the south of the country, but this time we shall move up north. And coming before us is a flying Sikh. I'm not joking. I'm really not joking. Govindra Singh ji, please come on stage, sir. Now, he's a very, very renowned gentleman. Now, he's been with the Air India with a decade of flying experience. And he's got a beautiful wife who's joined here with him today. And they make such a lovely couple. There's an amazing feature on the NDTV featuring this amazing couple. You both make a handsome couple, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Over to you.
Most men I've noticed in South India have some form of a facial hair. It is not so common in the North India as such. And so looking at that, I devised this law of conservation of facial hair. So I have noticed the lesser the hair over here, the more the hair over there. Has anybody noticed that? And yesterday, my wife actually confessed in front of a big crowd that my cause of this is not her, it is something else. And that actually led to a big talk because later on many wives stood up and said either they are responsible, confessed it like a true Christian, or they said, no, this is not my job, this is natural. Why I'm saying that is because don't go by my hair, it's deceiving. I used to have hair longer than most women sitting out here, probably till here. I was born in a Sikh family, some 40, 50, can't remember how long ago was that, some years ago. And I was born not in India, I was born in actually a part of Africa at that time called Rhodesia, from where the Rhodesian dogs come. And I have tried to live up to that expectation of being a Rhodesian dog myself, but I could never grow a tail, so nobody really considered me quite seriously on that. My parents were actually deputed to Zambia, which is the new name of the country. And they were there for about 10 years, and I was born, and I lived some part of my childhood over there. Came back to India, settled in New Delhi, and so I'm pretty much a Delhiite. I don't remember anything from Zambia. I don't remember the language Swahili, whereas I have somebody here who's an expert in Swahili, and I wish I knew bits and pieces of it because I would have conversed with him. So I was born into this very devout Sikh family, and automatically it got infected in me. In whatever your parents believe in and whatever they strongly walk with will eventually going to grow on you. You must have noticed that. At a very young age, I got involved with the Sikh religion, and I used to lead the prayers in my school. I studied in one of the topmost Sikh schools of Delhi. It's called the Guru Har Krishan Public School. I was at the top of everything, whether it was dramatics, whether it was sports, debates, academics, at the top. I was the blue-eyed boy of the school. And I don't know if you know about a Punjabi sitcom called Sanja Chula. You may have not heard about it. It was very popular in the North India. And the director of that came to my school. He was a friend of the principal of my school. And he just asked, could you give us a couple of kids? We want to do this Punjabi sitcom on the partition of India and the tensions between the Hindus and the Sikhs and the Muslims during the partition. And my name was on his lips. He just immediately said, take Govindra. I was that blue-eyed boy of the school. Throughout my life, I used to think about God. I used to think about a very critical thing, which most of us think about as well. It's called truth. Many of the people ahead of me, I can't even surmount what they have already shared, but they have all touched on this topic of truth. What is the truth? And sometimes when we refer to truth, we refer to it with a capital letter T, which means it's actually a proper noun, it's a proper name. And in my search of pursuit of truth, I went on a different journey altogether than what my religion was telling me about. My first important thing of truth was to find out the basics of it. I'm going to go a little slow on this. I'm not a scientist, by the way. I'm what you can call a generalist. I can talk generally about many things. I can use some very important words, and that I can show that I am a scientist, and you may think one, but that's not the fact. But I'll go slow with a few words here in case any one of you is taking notes. Because all of us are in the pursuit of truth. All of us want to know, where does it lead to? The most important things of truth is its exclusivity. Truth is exclusive. Two things can be false, but two things can't be true. That is extremely important when we search to the depth of truth, that how deep it is and how true it is. It's exclusive. It's either this or that. It can't be both. As I grew up in this Sikh family, I was exposed to gods, my Sikh gurus, Hindu gurus, and there was no mention in my religious text about creation, that how did we come to be, how the human race came, how the earth came, how this universe was formed. And so I automatically deferred to the educational system, and the educational system told me that we come from apes and monkeys. Our ancestors are somewhere in the jungle today, and they haven't figured out anything, but here we are. We have figured out all this technology. We have placed aircrafts and spacecrafts on different planets and on moon, and we've done all that, yet our ancestors are still sitting in a jungle somewhere. They don't even know how to fetch a different kind of a food for them. They're all designed, what they're doing. So did we really evolve from them? Did we really come from that? This was a question that began to haunt me. And as I looked into it, I began to see that there are various levels in evolution. For evolution, as we read what Charles Darwin proposed in the late 1800s, as we read that, he had little knowledge of certain very important aspects of biological life, of chemical life, which we know now today. Without that knowledge, he proposed a theory, and we just continue to use that theory into our academics, into our students, colleges, universities, and we just continue going there. However, today, if you research on the net, you will find out that there is not enough scientific evidence supporting that theory anymore. In fact, in most science journals, in most scientific community, it is not an accepted theory. It is still a theory. It was a proposal. It was postulated, but it has not been proven. Darwin was confronted with something what we call a Cambrian Explosion, the time where there are suddenly a big, large chunk of rock strata that has a lot of new forms of life. He could not explain it. And what he says in his Origin of Species Due Natural Selection, he says that as time progresses, as we dig more, as we find more, we will begin to find more fossils, which will then fill up the gaps and show us the parentage of this new life form. We have not found any. Darwin had no clue of what a human cell is. At the maximum, they thought it had 20 different things: protoplasms, a skin cell, some mitochondria, very basic stuff. Today we know that the human cell or any animal cell is such an advanced machine, it does stuff which is mind-boggling. I don't want to get into it. All these subjects actually need an entire day of a seminar. But it's a phenomenally complex piece of machinery, and there are close to 300 to 350 trillion of them right now in our bodies, firing and doing the job that are supposed to do, that is making us sit where we are. Darwin didn't know that. Later on, in the 60s, just before the 60s, we found out about the DNA. He had no idea of the DNA. He did not know that how information is transmitted from one cell, a parent cell, to a daughter cell, and how the daughter cell begins to multiply and use that information to build other proteins which are then required for that cell to be formed. He didn't know that. In the beginning, when we learnt about information that is there on the genome, We thought that only a small part of the genome is important, and the majority, 98% genome, we thought was junk. Again, this has been debunked. Again, I cannot go into the details of it because for the brevity of time. But the idea is this theory of natural selection and evolution of species by natural selection is actually not holding water anymore. However, it continues to be taught in our schools. Besides the point, my search for truth kept going further and deeper. And I was led to what we call something as an intelligent design. I realized that all these things had to be designed. Most of you here are from the IT industry. You know how important a computer program is. If there is a little change in the computer program, the entire program fails. You know that. You know that you can put 300 billion computers and typewriters and make anybody sit on them and write gibberish for millions of years, but you cannot write a program. A program is written with intent. If there is information in a program, it almost immediately shows that there is an intelligent mind behind it. There's an information theory which says that information cannot be created on its own. It cannot evolve. Where did the information in DNA come from? They can't answer it. Then they can't answer what is the chemical evolution. How did these nucleotides and these proteins and these amino acids, how are they formed in the prebiotic soup, which they call? They actually believe that you and I come from a soup, that our ancestors is some chemical soup some hundreds and billions of years ago. But where did that soup come from? How are they formed? These are extremely complex mathematical equations, chemical equations, which cannot happen on their own. Again, like I said, I can't go into the brevity of it, but I'm welcome to, you're welcome to contact me, and I can send you a lot of information on it. So once when I found out that there is no scientific evidence for evolution, but there is a direct evidence that shows that we were created by a creator, I wanted to find out, where is this creator? Who is he? Where is he mentioned? Is he mentioned in any religious text? Is he mentioned in any spiritual books? And my search led me to the Bible. And being the devout Sikh that I was, and just like one of the sisters before me was mentioning, my idea was initially to reject. How can this be possible? This is foreign. I'm a Sikh. I'm born into a Sikh family. Sikhism has been working for me all these years. I'm at the top of everything. Like someone just shared, they had chaos in their life. It was the exact opposite. My life was in order. Everything was going well for me. I was the best guy, the best student, the best son, everything best. I was at the top of everything. Things were actually going in my favor. There was no chaos, actually. But this thing began to trouble me. What is the truth? Am I coming from ancestors of apes and monkeys, or am I created by God? So as I began to read the Bible with a lot of reluctancy, I found out that no, the Lord Almighty, as He is mentioned in the Bible, is my creator. And there is an essence of life that He has placed in me and you, where we need to answer to Him. There's an essence of responsibility, there's an essence of accountability towards Him that we need to process. As I delved more into it, I came to a very tough part of the Bible, which most of us know as the Ten Commandments. The first time when it is mentioned in the Bible, it is in the book of Exodus. Like somebody earlier mentioned, that Bible actually has 66 different books written by 44 different authors over a period of about 2,600 odd years. Somebody can correct me on that. And in one of those texts in the book of Exodus, in chapter 20, verse 3, the Lord says, I am the Lord your God. You shall not have any other gods before me. That hit me like a train. What is this? I began to look into my anthropology. Where do I come from? Who are my ancestors, like we were discussing earlier? As I started to go back, I realized that I come from a guy, this person's name was Noah. Noah was there 2,600 odd years before Christ. There was a great flood over the entire planet, and we find evidence of that flood everywhere. In that flood, the entire human population perished. Looks like a fairy tale, but there is scientific evidence for it. There is historical evidence for it. There is archaeological evidence for it. There is evidence for it in the growth of cultures. There is evidence for it in the growth of languages. It all comes from there. So Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their 3 wives. These 8 people were saved in an ark. And my lineage and your lineage actually comes from Noah. There is DNA evidence to it. Again, like I said, I can't go into it. It's too detailed. The DNA directly puts me and you in one of the strands that comes from one of his sons from Noah. So Noah is my ancestor, and so is he yours. So if Noah is our ancestor, then Noah's God ought to be my God. And somewhere down the line, at some point, one of my ancestors decided to walk away from this God. I was interviewed by NDTV on one of the programs when Ghar Wapsi was a big event, and it was happening in Delhi, and some right-wing forces were thinking of promoting this issue of Ghar Wapsi, that they need to come back. They were addressing all of us, the core team of Witness, all the speakers who are here right now. All of us are first-generation Christians. They were addressing at us. There were statements also that were made in that effect by some political people. Anyways, besides the point. So in that, I was asked, why don't you do Ghar Wapsi? My point was, I already did Ghar Wapsi. The God of Noah is my God. He is my creator. Somewhere down the line, someone drifted away, and I felt it was my responsibility when I was 18 years old to come back to this God, and that's what I did. The moment I did that, all hell broke loose in my life. Like I said, I was the most brilliant guy. I was asked to leave my house. I came on the streets of Delhi. I remember at least 3 weeks, I actually slept on the roads. I used to go to a Central Park. My brother Manoj George is from Delhi. He knows where Central Park is. I used to go to the ISBT one night. I used to go to New Delhi railway station one night to sleep. I had no place to sleep. Chaos entered my life. All my family disowned me. My father legally put documents, and he actually put an advertisement in one of the leading newspapers that I disowned my son. My entire life was finished. I had no career, I had no money, I had no family, I had no friends. But what did I have? I had Jesus. I didn't know him that well then. But all I did is I knew that he is the truth. I got to follow him. I knew the cost of following him, but how do I turn my eyes away from truth? This evidence that I'm giving you, if you approach me and when I give you more detailed evidence, truth is going to confront you. How are you going to handle that? That's a decision we all have to make when we are confronted with truth. Following that, there was a church that gave me a place to live, and I began to live in that church, and slowly my life started all over again. I met my beautiful wife in that church a few years later, and we got married, and the Lord showed me many years ago that he would make me an airline pilot, and miraculously the money came, miraculously everything happened. And literally, like it says, David, one of the psalmists in the Bible says, you lifted me up from the miry clay and you placed me upon the rock. And that's where the Lord built me. And that's what he can do in your life. He did not come for achievers. He did not come for successful people. He did not come for people who didn't need him. He came for people who needed him. A doctor comes for a patient. If you've got that pain in your life, if you've got that brokenness, if you've got that misunderstanding about future, about relationships, if you've got that struggle, he has come for you. He came for me. I'm a living witness. That's what it is. I'm a living witness that He's alive. And He hears, like our sister said, and not only does He hear, He acts and He speaks. He guides your life. He takes you through. There are 4 pertinent questions about life for any of you who are taking notes. One is the question of origin. Where do we come from? The other is the question of morality. How do we decide what is right, what is wrong? The other is the question of destiny. Where am I going? And the other is the question of meaning. What is the meaning of my life? What does it mean to be human? In any court of law, for any one of you who is a lawyer here would know that answers given to a question have to be corresponding to the questions, and they have to be comprehensive. They need to attach to each other. When you look at the answers that Jesus gives to these 4 integral questions of life, you find that they are corresponding and they are coherent. Again, you can search it up on the internet. You can look it up, that what are the answers that Jesus gives to these 4 critical questions. I'll repeat to you the questions: the origin, the meaning of life, how do we define right and wrong, which is morality, and our destiny, where do we go? He answers it for you. He answered it for me, and He is today willing to give that answer to any one of you. To know more about Jesus, if there is a tug on your heart, if these testimonies and these witnesses that we have shared, if it speaks to your spirit, don't quieten it. Listen to that small, still voice and respond to it. It is not about a religion, like my sister shared earlier. It's about a relationship. We are all witness here that He is alive. Like I said, there are archaeological and scientific evidence that He rose from the dead. And He said, because I live, you shall also live. So you're looking for eternal life. If you want this picture in your life, this man standing with his arms open wide and complete surrender and joy to God, there's an invitation here. And that's the entire effort of this entire team, is to bring Christ to you in the most truthful way. Thank you for giving me your time. And may the Lord speak to you. Thanks.